In the darkest night, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, we stand tall. United forever. Strength and courage will overcome. Oh, surviving together, victorious, and never, never alone. Hand in hand, we'll face the unknown.
We see you, we hear you, and we believe you.
You've landed at Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to connect and create community on their healing journey, as well as providing trauma-related education for all. But bystander intervention, guys. Why did I decide to cover this topic? Well, I don't know about you, but I've often seen, different situations where I wasn't sure if I should say something. I wasn't sure what I should say. I wasn't sure how to go about the situation. And we're going to talk about bystander intervention in specifically the realm of sexual assault, sexual harassment, domestic violence. But in terms of intervening as a bystander, this can be anytime you're noticing something that you feel is not right. And that's your own moral compass, right? To decide whether or not you feel a situation needs to be intervened in. But this can be racism, bullying, sexism, gender discrimination, any situation where you feel, hey, that's really not right and something needs to be done. Not just because of what the person is saying, but how it's affecting somebody else. And that specifically is what I'm talking about in terms of bystander intervention as a third party. So there's two other people, somebody who's being a harasser or an abuser. There's a victim in the situation. And should you step in? Should you say something? I want to talk about the bystander effect real quick, because I think it's really important to understand. So in March 1964 in New York, there was a woman by the name of Kitty Genovese, or Genovese. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name. And she was unfortunately murdered. Now, she screamed and screamed and screamed. It was outside her apartment complex. And it was later reported that 38 people heard her screaming and yet did nothing. This is what was reported by the New York Times about 2 weeks after her murder. Now, what resulted from that let me put a little caveat on here first. According to court transcripts, according to what actually happened, there were people who did call the police. Unfortunately, nobody got there in time. All right. But what came out of it, excuse me, there were a lot of studies done because of this New York Times article that people were just horrified. What? 38 people and nobody said anything? Not a word? Nobody bothered to intervene? And what the studies that came out of it showed is that the more people there were, the less likely someone was to intervene. Wait a minute, does that make logical sense? So the converse was true. The fewer people who witnessed an event, the more likely there was that someone would intervene. That seems to go so counterintuitive. But I guess when you think of the psychology of it, the more people there are, the easier it is for people to feel like they don't have to take personal responsibility for the situation, that somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will call. Somebody else will do something. There's plenty of people around. I don't have to do anything myself. So what additional studies later on in time have shown that the most effective way, let me back up. So that became known as the bystander effect. The more people there were, the less likely it was that anybody was going to act. What future studies showed was that the most effective way to be able to get help, if you are in a situation where you're in a mass of people, a department store or a parking lot or just a busy street or whatever, the most effective way to get help is by asking for help, but focusing on one person. Asking one person who's passing by, miss with the yellow jacket, so that they know specifically that you're referring to them. Can you help me? Now, that person may or may not help, but by being called out, by being identified, it showed that people are more likely to then stop and offer some form of assistance, whether it's assisting you directly or whether it is, getting somebody else nearby to say, hey, can you help with this? In recent years, the idea of bystander intervention has become, don't be a bystander, be an upstander. It's like an upstanding citizen. So be an upstander. And how can you be an upstander? What do you do? I'll play a short video, and I think it was very well done. And this is about a woman who's being crowded on a subway or a bus, feeling very uncomfortable. And let's see what happens. And then I'm going to get into the specifics of each of the situations that was shown. I love her.
It's not okay.
No, no, stop, no. No, stop, no.
So that was just a short video to show you 5 different ways that you could intervene in a situation safely. And the 5 Ds go as called the 5 Ds: distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. And now I want to play you a short video that just goes through these a little bit more.
On being publicly harassed but had no idea how to help. At that time, you might have chosen to walk away. As a bystander, you can help prevent, derail, or discourage acts of harassment. Here are 5 tactics to effectively intervene when you spot harassment, also known as the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. Distraction is a creative, non-confrontational way to shift attention and interrupt harassment. You can ask for the time or directions. Pretend you know the person being harassed and strike up a conversation about something random. Create a commotion by spilling your coffee or dropping coins from your wallet. Turn to a third party for help. Depending on the situation, you can delegate to a friend, someone in a position of authority like teachers or security guards, or peace officers equipped to de-escalate the situation. Unless it's a medical emergency, don't contact the police and check in with the person being harassed first. Many communities, like communities of color, trans communities, and immigrant communities, may not feel safer with police presence. Recording an incident when it happens can be helpful when done safely and responsibly. There are a few things to keep in mind, such as make sure someone else is doing something to disrupt the harassment before you start filming. Maintain a safe distance from the incident. Film landmarks and clearly state the date and time. After filming, give the documentation to the person being harassed, giving them the power to decide what happens next. Sometimes harassers leave before anyone can intervene. You can still check in on the person targeted afterward. Some things that you can say are you okay? I'm so sorry that happened to you. Is there anything you need? Do you want to report this incident? Can I accompany you somewhere? Confronting the harasser is the most direct and riskiest intervention tactic. Before you step in, assess everyone's safety. If you feel safe to do so, you can confront the harasser by naming the type of harassment, stating what you observe. After you clearly set the boundary, turn your attention away from the harasser and towards the person being harassed and check in on them. Don't engage with the harasser and get into a back and forth. Whichever tactic you choose at the moment, remember that your action can be impactful. As bystanders, you hold the power to make a difference.
Let's talk about some potentially assaultive situations that you might be witnessing, a situation you're fearful that might result in an assault, whether that's a sexual assault or a physical violence type of assault. a situation where consent can't be given for whatever reason. The victim is unconscious, the victim is drunk, under obvious signs of some form of a drug, or any type of sexual harassment that's going on. And in regards to this, we're using sexual harassment very, very broadly. So this is going to involve inappropriate touching, groping, grinding, invasion of personal space, like we were seeing on that first video that I showed you, exposing themselves, exposing their genitals to somebody, and also public masturbation. I just included them all. So that's all within sexual harassment. Verbiage that is obviously sexual in nature, that is making somebody feel uncomfortable, falls under sexual harassment as well. Sexual harassment in general, by its definition, is any unwanted sexual conduct. Okay? So what do? Well, before we even get into sometimes you'll see 4Ds, sometimes you'll see 5Ds. Generally, when I've seen them, the 4 versus the 5, it's the document one that's been dropped. But we're going to talk about that since we're in that day and age. But before you even get into those, you need to notice the situation, notice what's going on. So this means paying attention to your surroundings, paying attention to how other people are acting and reacting. Nothing might be said, but you might see somebody, as we did in the first video, move closer to someone, and that victim is obviously uncomfortable, obviously does not want this added attention, or somebody's invading their personal space in a way that is making them extremely uncomfortable. So first you have to notice what's going on. Secondly, you need to evaluate and decide if action is needed. Sometimes just viewing everything for a little bit, whether that's a few seconds, whether that's a minute. Sometimes the person takes care of the harasser all by themselves. Or, they get up and move to someplace else and the person doesn't follow. So decide if you need to do something. Decide if action is actually necessary. Perhaps in that time you're viewing, the harasser actually moves on. Next, if you think something needs to be done, you really need to look at the situation and decide, if I decide to act, can I do so safely? Meaning, does the person have a weapon? Is the person being extremely overt in their behavior to where you feel if you were to intervene in any of these 4D ways, that you could be putting your own safety at risk? So that's something that you need to assess and decide. If you decide that you can safely intervene in some sort of way, then you have to decide, well, how should I? How should I intervene? What is the best course of action based on this particular situation? And so the first one we're going to talk about is distract. And I think this is an absolute great one that can work in so many different situations. Being able to go up to somebody and start talking to them as if they're a friend and try and pull them away from the conversation or the situation that they're in with the harasser, try and move them off, or at least engaging them enough that the harasser's like, hey, what's the deal? I was talking to this person. but then they kind of give up, right? And go and do something else. Asking for directions, just striking up a conversation for no reason. Um, you know, doing anything where it is taking the focus away from the harasser on the victim to you or to a different situation. You can even say to the person, hey, look at that. Look outside. Look at what's going on. Blah, 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 whatever it is. Look at the snow. It's so wonderful. Or, oh, the city sight's going by. Have you ever been there? And the second one that they talk about is delegation. And this is where you don't feel okay just interjecting yourself directly into the conversation. So you're going to look for somebody else, be that a store manager, be that the bartender, the bouncer, or I like that they warned about the police, because in some situations that may be your best bet. But as they stated on that video, there are some populations that are very wary of the police and are not going to welcome, even as the victim, they're not going to welcome police presence. So it is a situation you'll have to decide whether or not calling 911 or 999 or 411, whatever you have in your country, is the best course of action. Sometimes just, if you have a friend, the two of you together stand a better chance of being able to disrupt the situation. You're not just that one person. Two allies for the victim often is going to be enough for that abuser to go, okay, you know what, I'm out of here. Whatever, it's not worth it. So even if you don't have a friend by, I've seen situations where you could grab another stranger. I've looked at situations before and looked at somebody else, and we're both noticing this heated exchange. And so we're both kind of looking at each other of, do we say something? Should we say something? But neither one of us on our own are comfortable doing that or unsure about what we should do. So this stuff was very educational for me. It's given me a lot more confidence to be able to say, I think I could be an upstander, that I could safely interject myself into a situation, whether it's grabbing somebody else, causing a distraction, or intervening directly somehow. I feel a lot more comfortable with it now. But look around you and assess, is there somebody else you can grab? Just a perfect stranger who's witnessing the situation. Sometimes that can be your best bet as well. Now, documenting the situation. I say this with a caveat because, as they stated in the video, the last video that I showed you, you want to make sure that there is another person who is distracting, disrupting somehow the situation that's going on. What you don't want to do is just be filming it. I can't stand the amount of videos that I will see posted to social media where they were like, look, we witnessed this horrible thing, or we witnessed something, bad happening. And you've got so many people posting the same event to social media, and yet no one stepped in to do anything. Now, I can only hope that somebody in that crowd had called 911 or was getting somebody, and they were just documenting it in the meantime. But I thought it was really important that they said, listen, if you do document, offer that video to the victim. If it's somebody that they know, if it's a harasser who has been a constant in their life, or somebody, just somebody who's done this once before, they may need that information that may be important to them. So offering to send it to them is extremely important. Delay is delay talks about a situation where the person has already left. The person, the harasser, the abuser has already left. You've delayed acting for enough time that the victim is now alone. If you see the situation, check on the victim. See if they're okay. If this person had been bothering them, do they have a safe way home? Are they comfortable? Are they okay? Do they need somebody just to stand with them for a few minutes? Can they call anybody to pick them up? If they're shaking too much, but they need an Uber, maybe you can call the Uber for them. But check on the person. And this really has to do with the amount of empathy that we can have for strangers. Now, direct is the last of the D's, and this is the most risky because what you don't want to do is to get into an altercation yourself with the harasser slash abuser. And you also don't want to get into a back and forth with them. The goal is to be able to move the victim away from the abuser, from the person that they're uncomfortable with. And as we saw in the first video, that might be as simple as putting yourself in between the two people and just kind of acting as a human shield, depending on where you are, where you can do that and then engage that person in conversation. If you're going to speak to the harasser, something simple, such as, hey, she looks uncomfortable. Leave her alone. Or going up directly to the victim and asking them, is this person making you uncomfortable? Do you need some help? As the video pointed out, you can name the issue that's going on. Hey, listen, guy, that is harassment. Or by simply saying, that's uncalled for, what you're doing. I think you should stop. I think you need to leave. I think it's time for you to leave. I have seen people before, and I think this works only when you are someone who's very comfortable defending yourself. Usually it's a larger guy who speaks to the abuser harasser directly and is kind of like, hey, dude, calm down. If it's a heated conversation, maybe let's take a walk, or, why don't you have a seat? And tries directing the harasser kind of off into a different area. And hopefully at the same time, there's also somebody who's able to come up to the victim and bring them aware. Bring them away from that situation as well. So in a nutshell, those are the 5 Ds. I have one other video that I would like to play for you, and it has to do, this is a bunch of college students, and they're talking about situations that they found themselves in, ways that they have been able to successfully be an upstander or active bystander, and how that went.
I'm at a party and it's nearing the end, around 1 a.m. A girl and a boy were leaving, and I went up and talked to them, and I got to the point where I suggested that I found out later was that the girl was very scared and she didn't know what to do in that situation.
It happened on a bus, in the back of the bus, and there was 3 people, and it started when I noticed a very uncomfortable gaze on myself by this man. His attention, I think, quickly turned from me to the other person. And what was extremely troubling about that was the third person, the girl. She was like 12, 13 at most. He got up from his seat and moved and sat next to her. And immediately her body language was one of like, oh my God, I'm in a situation and I don't know what to do. One of shutting yourself off, but it goes to like crossing your legs and crossing your arms and like kind of scooching aside. So I got up and I was like, oh my God, hi, Catherine. I don't know if her name was Catherine. So good to see you. I was just talking to your sister. And she was like, yeah, right, okay. And then we just had this conversation and the guy looked really annoyed, like extremely annoyed, very visibly like frowning at me. And I think he caught on to the fact that this was some giant lie, but it didn't matter.
I was heading back home after a film with a friend, and we just parted ways. I saw this kind of scrawny-looking guy just walking behind this woman, and she was clearly really uncomfortable. I just thought if she was with a friend, she might feel safer. Ran up to her, almost pretended to be someone she knew. We walked in the other direction, and he didn't seem to follow us. So I guess it worked.
I played a lot of sports, and I've been a part of a lot of locker rooms, and there is certain things that are said in a locker room that are offensive or disrespectful. It's happened everywhere I've been, and you sort of feel uncomfortable when it's happening, and you don't always want to intervene. It's a tough thing to do. What I've noticed though is just refusing to participate in what is going on, or if you were asked to like sort of weigh in on what is being talked about, just show your disapproval. I notice all it takes is one person to really step up and show, hey, that's not what we're about, or that's not what I'm about, and other people can join in and also intervene.
When my team goes to the bar, often guys will come up when we're dancing and they'll start getting in behind you, trying to start grinding up on you. And we're pretty good that when we see that, we'll go in and grab the girl and be like, oh, there you are, like, want to go get a drink? Or you'll pretend to be really drunk and like stumble up to her, like bump him out of the way accidentally and start like shimmying. And I find if you dance with very loud arm movements, they tend to not come too close to you. They don't creep up behind you when you're making very large movements.
In about September, we host a lot of open parties for the public. I noticed a male and a female that looked pretty drunk, but the male was being a little bit overbearing and trying to grind really hard on the girl, obviously on the dance floor, but the girl looked noticeably uncomfortable. I went up to the guy, introduced myself, said, hey, how's it going? How's your night going? And just kind of had this like small talk chat that wasn't really important, but just gave the female enough time to come to her senses and just leave that situation and disappear into the dance floor and to find her friends, most likely.
So about a year ago, I went to a concert that was downtown, and on the way back, I heard a girl screaming, please help me, don't touch me. And one of my friends told the person that was backing her into a corner to leave her alone, and this person turned around, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. Like, my heart was racing, and eventually he left her alone. He walked away, and we just started asking questions, making sure that she was okay, and whether she wanted help or someone to talk to, or if she wanted us to walk with her to like the nearest SkyTrain station. It's really important to say something if you do see something like that happening.
It doesn't have to be like an overt or confrontational interaction. You don't need to be verbally addressing the other person. They can be subtle movements, the way you angle your body, cutting someone off.
You can confront, but doing so in a way where it's really lighthearted and you don't really have to be a direct confrontational person.
I think there's lots of little telltale signs that you can give people that say, this is not okay, I don't agree with that, without being confrontational or putting yourself in a position where you feel that you're unsafe.
I want to like tell people it's fine if it's awkward. It's fine if your lie, like in that situation, clearly the third party, the perpetrator, knew that it was a lie because it was very obvious. I had sat there the whole time and I hadn't said anything. And all of a sudden I remembered that this girl's name was Catherine. Of course, this was a giant lie. But it doesn't matter because things were awkward anyways. And the other outcome could be much, much more harmful.
I think it's really important to make space for folks who might need an out, might need someone who's nearby to just ask for a moment if everything's okay, because I think it's easy to avoid doing that when we don't want to intervene for fear of some sort of repercussion.
You do feel in your heart in situations what's right and what's wrong. And a lot of times I will admit that I haven't done the right thing as far as stepping in and intervening. But going forward, the more that you do step in those situations where you do feel something's wrong that's going on, that's what's going to eventually end, violence against women and make respect for women more commonplace.
I thought hearing from other people and hearing different situations might really help, especially as we look at and as we think about situations that we've been in before and that we've seen before. And one of the things that was mentioned was the man who said, I hear a lot of inappropriate things in the locker room. And I wanted to be able to take this bystander intervention a little bit further, a step further, in that it's not only just the situations where someone's behavior may be inappropriate, and it's not necessarily where it's a stranger. This could be a situation where it's your friend, your family, your coworker. If somebody is saying something about another person and you feel that it's wrong, you get that gut feeling. And again, this goes back to everyone's individual morality, and it's not going to be the same from person to person. But if you hear jokes about SA, if you hear victim blaming, if you hear someone bragging about how easy someone was because they were so drunk, or a worse situation that they're bragging about or bringing up, these are times that you step in and you say, hey, that's not okay. What you did was not okay, or what your friend did was not okay. And you repeating it in a way that is seeming that you're for it is not okay. And this is where we need to educate people. If they're making SA jokes, if they're victim blaming, I bought her dinner and I bought her drinks and she was dressed all sexy. And then she rejected me, when I tried to come in at night. I can't believe she did that to me. I can't believe she led me on like that. These are opportunities for us to be able to educate people. And it may fall on deaf ears. That is a distinct possibility. but maybe it'll make a dent. Maybe it will fall on his deaf ears, but maybe somebody else who's there, who's listening, maybe it'll click with them. And the next time a situation comes up or somebody says something that's inappropriate, they're willing to step forward because they're like, hey, I need to be able to recognize this and to try and stop it in its tracks. I'm going to go back to the beginning when I talked about the bystander effect and how the more people you have, the less likely it is that someone's going to help an individual. And then I said the converse is true. See, if at least one person tries to help another, the chances of additional people coming to that person's aid is increased. It's called the helper effect. That one person just to break the seal on that bottle, to cut that invisible rope, and it just opens the gates for everybody else to be able to come forward. There is safety in numbers. There's safety in numbers in terms of being anonymous and not taking responsibility for what is going on. There's also safety in numbers of being able to help. So challenge yourself. Next time you see something, can you be that upstander? Is there something that you can do or say to help the person who's being harassed? So I want to know, is there a favorite phrase that you like to use if you're going to interject with somebody? Do you pretend to be that friend? Do you not feel confident enough to interject? Tell me about your bystander intervention experience. I know that there's been times that I've regretted not saying anything. And I feel more equipped now to be able to do so. And I hope that you do as well. Please, if you haven't, if you can hit that like button, it's really important, really helps the algorithm, as does those comments. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Why not? And share the content out. If you know somebody who you think might benefit from hearing the message that I had to say today, please share the video with as many people as you want, on as many platforms as you would like. Remember, you are worthy. You are valuable. And you are loved for who you are, just the way you are. Surviving together, never alone.
Through the fire, through the rain, we have walked through endless pain, but we stand, we rise again, stronger now, we break the chain, surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, tear, every scar tells the story of who we are. Not just survivors, but warriors too. With love as our armor, we see this through. We see you, we hear you, and we believe in you. Surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, together we shine. We see you, we hear